Just before we get into this video, guys, if you want to follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, the links are here. And if you also want to support me on Patreon as well and help out my channel, that would be absolutely awesome as well. But let's get on with the video. Hey guys, Wingy here, and welcome to a brand new Doctor Who related video on my channel. Now, a while ago, I looked at the top 3 best of the 6th Doctor and the top 3 worst of the 4th Doctor. Today, I'm now doing the top 3 best of the 5th Doctor, but you know that because it's in the title and it's in the thumbnail, so if it's only coming to you now as a bit of a surprise, then well, surprise. The 5th Doctor, I feel, is a very underrated Doctor, and that is something that I will talk about in another video. But basically, for me, I feel like because he came after Tom, because he is not really alien in any way, shape or form, or at least as much as especially his predecessor, but some of the other Doctors as well. I feel like for those reasons, he sort of goes under the radar, but he definitely has some incredible stories. Now, if you've ever watched my channel before, where I've spoken at all about the 5th Doctor era, you probably know the 3 stories that I'm about to talk about, or at least 2 of them. But either way, I'm going to give my opinion, so let's get started. I don't know what my hand's doing. So, starting off then with number 3, and I'm going to talk about a story that I personally feel is underappreciated. People don't tend to look at it as much, but I really like it, and that is Resurrection of the Daleks. Now, the reason why I really like this one, and it's in my top 3 best, because I know some people are going to say, what about Kinder? What about the Visitation? What about this story? What about that story? Well, for me, Resurrection is one that I find myself coming back to more than any of the others, apart from the other 2 that I'm going to talk about after this one. The reason being is because this story is an absolute fucking mess, but in terms of how it portrays the Daleks, in terms of how it portrays Davros and the Doctor and their dynamic together, I think it's one of the best Dalek stories that we have ever had. In fact, I'd say it's the best of the 80s, clearly. That's some tough going, because both Revelation and Remembrance are some fucking good stories. It really is a brutal story, and it shows you the power of the Daleks when they first crash through on that space station. It is just a glorious Dalek moment where they release the virus and you see people decaying. Loads of people die in this story at the hand of, or the egg whisk of, the Daleks. And that's what you want to see in a Dalek story. You want to see them be the giant threat that they supposedly are. In the classic series, I feel, at least in certain stories, we don't feel it enough. We hear about the mystery of the Dalek and they're the most deadly creature in the universe. This story is just like, yeah, they are the most deadly creature in the... Oh, fuck, there's no point explaining to him now because he's dead. Like I said though, this story is a bit convoluted, but I think once you've seen it a couple of times, maybe 3, 4 times even, then you start to grasp what is actually happening in this story. And I think once you fully understand what is going on, yes, it is sloppily handled. However, it's actually quite a good idea. The whole idea of the duplicates going to Gallifrey and killing the High Council. A lot of people would argue that that is again one of the precursors to the Time War, and I myself would definitely agree with that. Then you have the Doctor and Davros in, you know, the usual things, and I often say that it is some of the best stuff that a Doctor will ever get, you know, when he faces off against Davros, and this is no exception. The scene where the 5th Doctor goes into Davros's room and is just like, I'm not here as your prisoner, I'm here as your executioner. That's actually a really good moment, because that is not something that you would see the 5th Doctor doing. Obviously he backs out of it, but the fact that he went to do it in the first place is so out of character for Peter Davison's Doctor, but it works really well because it is so out of the blue for him. Davros is great in this story. Terry Malloy, as I said in my Davros video not too long ago, I really love him as Davros. I think he is one of the best best actors to play the character of Davros. There we go. Next up then, we are going to be talking about Earthshock, which of course was impossible for me to put second, but there is one story that, you know what it is, but we'll get to Caves in a second. Earthshock for me has a special place in my heart, because this is the story that I saw second from the classic era. Now I know that sounds mad, because people are just going to be like, yeah, but it wasn't your first, was it? But this was also the story that introduced me to the Cybermen, and it's one of my earliest memories of Classic Who. Yes, it's not the first experience, but I was delving into Classic Who at the time. This was the next story that I happened to watch, and it just so happened as well to be a fucking good story. So much so that I bought one of these years later because of my love for the Cybermen in this story, because of the design of these Cybermen. I think it is a genuinely great design, and they are my favourite villain, and I think the reason for that is because of Earthshock. Now, annoyingly, having rewatched it not too long, I'm going to put this down before I carry on with that. Annoyingly, because I have watched it again recently, but with my girlfriend who'd only just seen it for the first time, she pointed out something quite interesting. This story is, yes, a very good story. However, the Cybermen don't need to be the villain. You could take out the Cybermen and put in a different villain altogether and the story wouldn't really change too much. And to be honest, yeah, Becky, I do agree with you. However, that doesn't diminish that this story is still amazing and is still very, very good, and the Cybermen are awesome. The story just builds and builds. You know, part one is really claustrophobic and atmospheric, and then when you get towards the more spaceship stuff, then it becomes a thriller. You know, then it becomes a race against time, and it's stopping the Cybermen, because essentially in this story, pretty much the Cybermen win. Adric dies at the end of this story, and that is because the Doctor failed to save him. It's brushed over like nothing fucking happened in the next story. However, at the time, I imagine this was quite impactful. There's a lot of stuff in this story that I really enjoy every single time that I see it. I think the scenes in the caves where people are just getting picked off by the androids, that's brilliant. I love the bit where the Doctor first confronts the cyber leader and they're talking about emotion, and he's like, all I need to do is threaten this woman's death for you to obey me, and you don't see emotions as a weakness. Like, that moment is a genuinely great one. The siege of the ship by the Cybermen, again, another great moment. This story is regarded as one of the best for a reason, and that's because it is genuinely one of the best. However, annoyingly, it isn't, or didn't need to be, a Cyberman story, but it is one, so deal with it. I've just farted in here and it properly reeks, so this next bit's going to be fun. So then, the last story, as you're probably aware, is going to be the Caves of Androzani. Now, this obviously is one of the best Doctor Who stories ever. I think it's the best Fifth Doctor story. I think it's the best regeneration story. Probably the best of the 80s, or just in general, really. I just really love this one. Now again, I think a lot of people in recent times have sort of looked back on this one and gone, yeah, maybe it's not as good as we made it out to be. However, I disagree. I think this is genuinely one of the most innovative, creative and heroic moments in Doctor Who history, both on and off screen, because this was totally different to anything that had appeared in Doctor Who up to this point, and arguably since. This is a story that is essentially the opposite of The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, in the sense that in that story, everybody lived, whereas in this story, everybody dies. Apart from Perry. But another thing about this story as well is the Doctor being there doesn't really need to happen. Now, in any other story where that happens, I will probably be sat here in this very room, in front of this very camera, talking to you very much amount of people. I needed to say very, but I didn't know how to fit it in. Either way, I'll be sat here talking to you lot, bitching and moaning, saying like, well, it didn't even need to happen. The Doctor didn't even need to be there. And, you know, somehow it's happened and the Doctor had no impact on the story whatsoever, blah, 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 blah. But in this story it works, because the story isn't about necessarily what is going on and how the Doctor can fix it. This story is, okay, the Doctor's gone to a place that he shouldn't have gone to, and now he has to get out. But the getting out part, that's what the story is about. Along the way, there are multiple different hurdles, shall we say, that both the Doctor and our dearest Penny have to get out of. You know, being poisoned, being executed, being involved with gun running, the military, corrupt government, androids, weird armadillo dragon bat thing, a planet that's exploding and basically caving in on itself, pardon the pun. So yeah, it's not a fun time for the Doctor or Perry. And also there's some weird, creepy Phantom of the Opera dude who's trying to, you know, kidnap Perry and enslave her as his wife or something. It's fucked up. There's a real sense of urgency about Caves of Androzani, and I think that's the thing to me that appeals about it the most, because to be fair, a lot of classic Doctor Who is quite slow, sometimes for the better, for more meaningful and impactful build-up, other times just because they're padding the episodes out, particularly when it's like, you know, the 6 and above part stories. A lot of the time it feels like there's at least one episode that didn't need to be there. With this story though, it just goes like that. There's always something happening. There's always some sort of danger. There isn't too many times where the Doctor and Perry can just sit back and take a breath. They have to constantly keep moving, keep thinking, keep being on their toes. And to be honest, when it comes to the supporting cast, like I say, everybody's a bad guy essentially, but for different reasons. Some of the reasons are actually quite justifiable. Sharaz Jek in this story is pinned to be the big main villain, but in a lot of ways he's the most misunderstood character in the entire thing. And in a lot of ways, even though he is doing a lot of shady shit and he is doing a lot of like creepy shit to Perry, kind of feel sorry for him in places. Also has some of the best cliffhangers, 1 and 3. Amazing. And then of course this story is famous for the regeneration. The Doctor in this is incredibly heroic, arguably more so than we have ever seen him, and I really like that aspect to his character because it shows you, it's kind of a nice circle actually, because of Earthshock obviously he was helpless and had to let his companion die, whereas in this one he's going to the extreme to make sure that his companion doesn't die, and I really like that. It doesn't exactly bookend the Davison era, but there is a nice little parallel there, considering that he has already gone through a companion death, and this time he's, you know, essentially killing himself so that he doesn't have to go through that again, or people that he's with don't have to go through that again. It's probably Peter Davison's best performance, and I think for that alone it has to be number 1. But that is just what I think about the 5th Doctor era and some of his stories. But in the comments below, guys, let me know what you think. What would your top 3 of the 5th Doctor era be? And yes, I totally understand, like I said at the very beginning, stories like Kinder, The Visitation, I understand why you would put them on here, and if it was a top 5, those 2 are probably on it. However, for me, I didn't put them on, as you can tell by now. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it, subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon links are in the description below, so if you would support me on any of those things, I'd absolutely love you forever. But until next time, guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye. I've got to put this on again. I've got to put this on. Hey, yeah, fucking stinks.